Well, hello. My paper 3 exam is tomorrow, and today I'll be trying to recall all of the economics content, micro and macro, uh, out of my memory. It's gonna be a long video. It's gonna take, I think, around 2 or 3 hours. By the way, a small disclaimer: I'm in no way a professional economist or like an economics guru. Like, I don't know everything. I'm just going to recall things that I remember, and it's gonna be pretty hard because it's out of my memory. I'm blindfolded and I'm being recorded. I'm not really used to being recorded. Okay, so yeah, that's everything. So we have a clock here. It's gonna be an uninterrupted video, no cuts, no anything. And if I cut anything, you can see on the clock because it's constantly moving the arrow. And if I did any cuts, you would see it on the thing. Also, let's talk about the equipment we have today. So we have extra water because my mouth is gonna be so dry. I'm gonna be talking so much. We have this bowl of water as well. We have blindfold, obviously, and yeah, and I have a straw because why? You might ask why am I gonna be drinking from this thing instead of a water bottle. I'll be blindfolded, obviously, and if I need to drink, I'll have to take it off, and it's gonna be taking a lot of time. It's basically a practical thing. I can just like sip it like this instead of like opening it. And if I'm blindfolded, I might just knock the water bottle over. It's gonna be all over the place. So instead of doing that, it's the most rational, practical solution I have, and it's easy to like touch when I'm blindfolded, and I can just drink, and it's not gonna spill because like it's has a big surface area, obviously. So let's start because I have an exam tomorrow. I don't really have time to be like waiting for anything or stuff like that. So yeah. Hopefully it's recording. Let me check 1 second because if it's not recording, that was a perfect intro. Okay, thank God it's recording. So let me blind myself. I have this blindfold thing. As you can see, like it's super thick. Like you can't see anything through the thing, even if I stretch it. Like you can't see anything. And there's nothing in my ears. No earphones. No nothing that could help me cheat or anything. So, and yeah. Let me position myself so I'm in the middle of the frame, because I don't want you to be watching like 3 hours of video of me like being on the side. So I think that's the center of the frame, like this. So okay, let me put this on. I'll also put like glasses on, because if I don't, I just look like a hostage, and it's not gonna be really natural for you to observe me just talking like this. So I'll just put the glasses on so it feels a bit more like natural thing, I guess. And they're also transparent, like you can see everything through them. Like there's no screens inside or something. And like if I was like peeking through my glasses like this, you would obviously see. So my hands are not even going to touch the mask for the whole time, so it's fine. So hopefully it looks okay. Can you see me? The camera should be somewhere like that. My straw. Where's my straw? Okay, I want to drink a bit before we start. What is this? Okay, good. Okay, it's working. That's good. The phone's here, right? Okay, where is it? Yeah, it's right there. Good. Okay, so let's start with microeconomics. Oh, it's gonna be such a long video, man. Okay, so let's start with the basics of microeconomics. Consumer surplus is basically the benefit consumers receive, like an extra benefit consumers receive from a transaction. It's the area above the market price, under the demand curve. And then there's producer surplus, is the extra benefit the producer receives from a transaction, and it's below the, actually no way, it's above the supply curve, but below the market equilibrium price. That's the producer benefit. And you can also see the changes in the benefits if you shift supply and demand curves, and you can shade the area and basically represent them. But now let's just go to the basics of microeconomics. So economics in general is considered a social science because it scientifically studies human behaviors and interactions in society. Okay, what do we have now? We have hypothesis. Hypothesis is basically an assumption about the outcome. And there's also a theory. It's basically a hypothesis which was proven correct with facts and evidence, yeah. Then we have goods and services. Goods are tangible items that firms produce. And services are intangible deeds and actions which firms sell. So basically you can't touch them. You can't touch a service, but you can touch a product because it's a physical thing. Economists use the concept of ceteris paribus when deciding and evaluating effects of economic policies, because the outcome could always change based on numerous factors. So they assume that some things are constant while others change to make assumptions about the outcome of certain policies. Okay, so economists always decide what, when, and for whom to produce. Then there's also a microeconomic idea of scarcity, which basically states that resources are limited, but human wants are unlimited. So we must prioritize and allocate them efficiently for the well-being of the economy. Additionally, we have opportunity cost. It's basically the next alternative option, best next alternative option given up in favor of the other. So when you make a choice, the option you didn't choose, it was second best, that's the opportunity cost. We have also wants and needs. Want is a desire to improve the quality of life, but a need is an essential thing for survival, like water or food. We also have production possibility frontiers. It's basically a diagram which displays the most optimal combination of output an economy can produce when it's fully utilizing all of its resources efficiently. So that's a production possibility frontier, and it could shift outwards or inwards depending on the conditions and availability factors and quantity factors under quality and technology and weather and everything like that. So that's the basics. We also have different, I think it's the, let me think, wait, no, oh no, I forgot, wait. There's something else I'm forgetting in the basics. Oh yes, factors of production. We have land, which is basically like factories, buildings. We have labor, which is basically employees, staff the firm has, and then we have capital, which is basically machinery and equipment, and we have the enterprise, which is basically innovation, your brain, your entrepreneurship, basically how innovative you are, how many ideas you have, your creativity. A reward for land is rent. The reward for labor is wage or salary. The reward for capital is interest, because like it's an asset and it accumulates. And a reward for enterprise is profit. You are rewarded with profit for taking action and actually trying to have your own firm. Then we have, I think sectors for the economy is going to be like a macro thing, so I'll just skip it for now. Yeah, so let's go and talk about demand supply. Wait, actually no. Now let's do the functions of money first. So functions of money. Money is a medium of exchange. It's universally recognized to possess value, so people exchange it during economic transactions. It's a unit of account. Basically, you can use prices to measure inflation and stuff over time. Also, it's a form of deferred payment. Basically, money could be a loan, which is given now but paid later. And money is also a store of value. You can keep the money, and over time you can still buy other goods. So it stores value, unlike other things which depreciate over time. Then we have a price mechanism. Price mechanism basically explains how supply and demand and market forces set the equilibrium price in the market. We have so the three functions are signaling, incentivizing, and rationing. So basically, price signals to firms when to supply and how much to supply. Price also incentivizes firms how much to supply. If the price is higher, they supply more, there's incentive for profit. And it also rations the things. So when there is excess demand, it rations the demand, and basically it tells people how much to demand. So how does price mechanism work? When the price is above the equilibrium and there is excess supply of goods, the suppliers would see that they have stock left over, which they didn't sell, and to avoid the wastage, they would gradually decrease the supply until it reaches the equilibrium, and that's how it basically reaches equilibrium, because unsold items signal to the firms that there is not enough demand for the supply the suppliers are producing. And when there's excess demand and there is a surplus of goods and it's below the market price, the price mechanism rations the good to the person, but some people who missed out on the good would actually offer more for the good, and eventually when everyone would start doing that, they would basically bid up the price, and eventually it's going to achieve the market equilibrium once again. So price mechanism basically causes any price level to go back to the market equilibrium, because if it's too high, it's going to decrease to avoid wastage, and if it's too low, it's going to go back up because people just offer money for it. Okay, now let's go to supply. Oh, I love supply, man. Okay, supply is basically how much firms produce in the economy and how much they supply to the market. We have different types of supply. We have joint supply. It's basically one supply of one good creates a byproduct, like, I don't know, beef and milk, because when you have a cow, it produces milk, but at the same time produces beef. Yeah, that's supply. And there's also factors which affect supply. There's factors which affect supply. So, wait, let me think, because I might confuse it with macro factors for AS. So the factors that affect supply include technology, because technology makes your capital more productive. Includes costs of production. Actually, no, wait, I'm going into... Actually, no, that's macro, yeah. It includes the cost of production, productivity of labor, time as well, I get. No, it's not time. Time is for PS. Okay, so basically productivity costs, weather impacts the output, because sometimes if there's a bad harvest, it decreases the amount of farmable crops, or natural disasters could damage the soil, and there would be less land, which is a factor of production. So the quantity of factor of production would decrease. Wait, I'm going into macro. What? Okay, so yeah, that's basically supply. And then we have demand. Demand is, there's more to demand than there is to supply. Demand is basically dependent on, demand is when consumers are willing and able to pay for the good or service. Demand could be, there's different types of demand, by the way. There's joint demand, when goods are complements, they are consumed together and they are demanded together, so it's a joint demand. Then there's competing demand. It's when goods are substitutes and replace each other, so they're basically demanded. The demand for them is the opposite. Then we have composite demand, basically when the demand, it's a demand for a good, or a raw material, which is demanded in different sectors and markets. For example, like glass, you might need glass and for telescopes, but you also need glass for binoculars, and you also need glass for phones, windows, cars. So different markets demand the same thing. That's composite demand. And yeah, that's the demand. I think I'm forgetting something right now. I wish I could just look at the paper and see what I missed, but I'm not doing that because I can't see. Okay, let's go to the behavioral economics now. So behavioral economics studies human behavior on a psychological and emotional level, and basically learns how humans might act irrationally, even though they should not act irrationally. So we have utility is basically the happiness you get from consuming something. We have marginal utility is basically a benefit you receive from consuming an additional unit. Then we have total utilities, the total utility you receive from consuming all units. Yeah, and then there's an idea of utility maximization. So we people, we have limited money. So what we try to do is we tend to buy things which bring us the most happiness. So we choose the goods that we think would maximize our utility. Why is everything so bright? What the hell? Wait. Something's wrong. No? Okay. Okay, next up, what do we have? Utility. Okay, yeah. There are different biases that people have. Let's talk about this one first. We have bounded rationality. Is basically we have limited cognitive processing abilities, so we might our thinking is limited, our thinking capacity is limited. So even if we have all the information, sometimes we might make wrong choices when buying something. Then we have bounded self-control. Is basically when we struggle to stick to long-term goals and control ourselves. So in the short run, we would consume something without thinking about long-term consequences. Then we have altruism. Is basically when people maximize utility of others out of fairness. Like if I donate to a charity, it doesn't maximize my utility personally, but helps somebody else. It's still behavioral economics, like rationality, because I'm spending money and it doesn't benefit me directly. And so it's kind of a market failure. And then we have cognitive biases. We have like anchoring bias, is basically judging by the first piece of information you receive. We have availability bias, is basically judging by the most recent information you receive. Then we have social norms, is basically a herd behavior where people follow what others are doing. Like you see some TikTok trend and everyone starts repeating it. That's herd behavior. It's a social norm. This trend becomes a social norm and people try to act it out in order to fit in and get the recognition the society provides for it because it's a norm. So that's a social norm behavior. Then there's rules of thumb. So basically when there's too many options and information available, people would just buy what's good enough instead of actually analyzing all information and choosing the best one. So sometimes even if you have perfect information, you have all the choices presented to you, you will still mislead and misallocate your resources and not maximize your utility because you're just lazy. You'll just buy what's good enough for you. You don't need to like fully maximize every penny of the purchase you have. And that's the bias. And there are solutions to the behavioral economics irrationality, such as choice architecture. Choice architecture refers to how a choice is presented to you, and it basically that's framing. Wait, it refers to the layout of available choices. Let's say you put like unhealthy food in the furthest corner of the store. So this way, when someone is trying to buy the unhealthy food, they have to go to the furthest corner, and it kind of stops them from doing that. Then we have framing, is basically the way you present a choice to somebody. So it also impacts your decision making, because if you present some choice as the bad one, they will be less likely to choose that choice. Then we also have 3 types of choices. We have default choice. It's when you're already automatically enrolled into a choice, like a pension scheme. Then we have mandated choice, when you're legally obligated to make a choice. And we also have a restricted choice, is basically when some options are harder to choose than others, but it's still possible. Let's say in UK, organ donations is you're automatically enrolled into it, but the process of you rejecting it and cancelling it is a type of restricted choice, because it's very hard. There's a lot of bureaucracy, you have to fill papers and everything. So it stops many people from doing that. It benefits society because there's consistent organ supply in the economy. That's the utility, and that's everything for behavioral economics. Now let's talk about price elasticity of supply, about PED, XCD, and YAD. So price elasticity of demand basically measures how responsive is demand to changes in price. So the factors which affect price elasticity of demand are type of good, what good is it? Then we have is it habit forming or is it addictive, and depends on that as well. Then it also depends on the proportion of income, because some goods are expensive, so you can't really buy them all of. Then the other one is also I think it's a type of good, normal or inferior good, and then it also depends on if it's a complementary good or a substitute. Then we have PES, price elasticity of supply, is basically how elastic supply is to changes in price. Price elasticity of supply depends on productivity, spare capacity, availability factors of production, time period, stockpiles, and perishability. So basically, if your laborers are productive, you can easily supply more. Then if you have spare capacity, you can basically overrun your machinery to produce extra. Spare capacity, and if you have state of the economy as well, because if the economy is doing well, the demand for capital is high and it's expensive, so you can't really afford capital if you need to increase output. But when the economy is in recession, capital is cheap and affordable, so you can easily access it if you need it. So it impacts it. And then there's stockpiles and perishability. Some goods you can stockpile, like if I make like bricks, I can keep them in a warehouse for years and they'll be fine. But if I produce like a farmable crop like carrots, they're gonna expire in like, I don't know, a month, so you can't really stockpile them. So it also depends on that. And we have XED is cross elasticity of demand, basically how price of one thing changes the demand for the other, like how responsive it is. It's used to determine whether a good is complementary, substitute, or unrelated to each other. Then we have YED, income elasticity of demand, basically refers to how changes in income affect the demand for the good, and whether it's normal or inferior good, luxury or an essential good. Oh, this thing makes my eyes itch. I'm not used to having this blind thing. Okay, let me drink a bit because I was talking so much. Okay, next up, I think we covered the first section of micro. Let's talk about the market structures now, because that's a big topic in micro. Wait, is that the camera's here, right? Let me check. Is the camera's there? Yeah, the camera's here. Cool, perfect. Okay, so introduction to market structures. Each market structure has unique characteristics, and the key aspects of each market structure are a number of sellers and buyers in the market, barriers to entry and exit, type of information within the market, type of good within the market, and sometimes price making power. Let's talk about types of barriers first. The common barriers include legal barriers such as copyrights and patents and everything, because big firms, they have all the patents and copyrights, and so new firms which join the market can't afford it, so they can't compete, so it's a barrier. Then we have sunk costs, basically costs that you have to endure when you leave the market and sell your capital. It's the costs that cannot be recovered when you're actually doing the same. So new firms are scared to enter the market and try to compete, because if they fail, they'll have to sell all the capital and they can't recover the money. Some things you can't recover, like specialized machinery, you can't recover. Advertising costs, you cannot recover advertising costs. So that's why small firms are deterred from entering the market. Then we have brand loyalty. Big firms, they have a lot of brand loyalty and reputation. So small firms don't really have that, and they're going to struggle to break even and make a profit. There's also another one, I think, but I can't remember right now, and I don't want to stop thinking about it. Brand loyalty. Oh, economies of scale. Yeah, basically, big firms, they have money, obviously, and they can afford to buy the best machinery, hire the best managers, and they basically can charge lower prices for their goods. And when new firms join, they can't really afford that, so their prices will be higher, and rational consumers would just buy from a firm that offers the cheapest price, which is going to be the big firm. Incumbent firm, keyword. Incumbent firm which is already operating within the market. Okay, so yeah, that's everything for legal barriers mostly. Let's go to the types of information. Okay, so we have perfect information when there's perfect information in the market, imperfect information when there's imperfect information regarding business practices and operations in the market. Then we have symmetrical information when both parties of a transaction have equal access to information, and we have asymmetrical information when one party of a transaction knows more than the other, like car reselling or antiques. Basically when that. And then we have types of goods. Let's talk about that. We have homogeneous goods which are literally the same. Homo means one, homogeneous, like farmable crops, like carrots, watermelons, apples. Like you cannot make them different. They're naturally the same. Then we have heterogeneous goods. These are goods which are similar but are different. Okay, wait, no, heterogeneous goods is just goods that are different. Then we have differentiated goods. Differentiated goods are goods which are similar in essential aspects but are differentiated for competition purposes. Like, I don't know, a toothbrush. It have a different shape. It could have a different surface. It could have different quality. It's a differentiated good. And then at the end we have unique goods. These are goods which are unique and have little to no substitutes, like fine art. Like if you produce a painting, there's no other substitute for that painting because you're the only one who can supply the painting. So it becomes a unique good in the market. Let me drink more because my throat is getting dry because I've been talking so long. I don't know, it's probably been like 30 minutes at this point. Okay, so now we discussed all the key characteristics of every market. We can finally talk about the market structures, like actual firm types. Okay, we have perfect competition first. It's a market structure where there is no entry barriers, there's no information gap, so it's perfect information. The goods are homogeneous, all the same. These firms, they're super small because there's a lot of competition, so they have no price making power. They basically make they might do super normal profit. Actually, no, they don't. They're allocatively productively efficient in the short run, and in the long run, they make a normal profit because they have no control over price and they have no price making power. They might have some super normal profit in the short run though. That's basically perfect competition. There's literally nothing else except for. Then we have contestable markets. Contestable markets are markets with very high levels of. Contestable markets are markets where number of firms in the market always fluctuates because of low entry barriers. So there's always a threat of hit and run, where a firm not only competes with firms in the market but also competes with potential firms outside of the market. So instead of making in the short run it makes super normal profit, in the long run it makes normal profit because it feels hit and run, because new firms will enter and undercut and steal customers with higher supply. So that's a contestable market. And also in the contestable market there is a thing called creative destruction, basically when the high levels of innovation and competition make old technology obsolete and outdated, and it basically destroys the invention of that technology. Basically, it's like VHS players or DVDs, they became outdated because we invented new technology to replace them, and now no one really cares about them. So yeah, that's that. My eyes itching, I don't know why. Technology, yes. Okay, now we have monopolistic competition. Monopolistic competition is pretty similar. It has some entry barriers, has some imperfect information. But the uniqueness of this market structure is that firms have differentiated goods, so they change them for competition purposes. And they also compete in the short run. They might make super normal profit, but in the long run they stick to a normal profit and allocative efficiency because they face a lot of competition and they don't really have a lot of price making power. Next market structure is one of the key ones. It's an oligopoly. Oligopoly is a market structure where a few large dominant firms dominate the market. So it's pretty concentrated and they all are interdependent, so they are reliant on each other for choices and actions. So oligopolies could collude basically when the price change. Okay, basically, yeah, collusion is when firms agree to limit pricing and stuff. So there's two types of collusion. There is overt and tacit collusion. Overt collusion is when oligopolies communicated with each other and they have a formal contract or like an agreement or like a call, and they agreed to limit pricing and competition. Tacit collusion is when they didn't communicate, but the price changed, like price leadership, for example. Yeah, and firm oligopolies which overtly collude are called cartels. It's the oligopoly which colludes. For oligopolies, and they have a lot of competition. Actually, no, they don't have. They just face a lot of interdependence, and there's a lot of uncertainty because they never know how others will react, and they also could participate in price and non-price competition. So price competition includes predatory pricing, where you sell the products below the average variable cost, or there's a practice called price collusion, where you just agree to limit pricing, or there is price wars when you try to undercut each other with lowest price. Yeah, Then there's types of non-price competition, which oligopolies actually prefer, because price wars are actually harmful to the whole market, and they just don't want to do that. So non-price competition includes quality, branding, loyalty cards, and advertising. Basically, just whatever makes your good and product more appealing than your competitors' ones. Yeah, that's everything for oligopolies. And next up we have monopolies. Monopoly, there are assumptions about monopolies. So theoretically, monopolies have 100% market share. Theoretically, monopolies have huge economies of scale, and theoretically, monopolies profit maximize, and theoretically, entry barriers are super high. These are assumptions about the monopolies. Monopoly is basically when there's one dominant firm in the whole market. There is a pure monopoly is when 100% of market share is owned by the monopoly, or there's a legal monopoly when 25% or more of market is owned by the monopoly. So monopolies are pretty unique. They're big firms. They have a lot of control over the price. The information is imperfect. They exploit consumers. They profit maximize at the point where MC equals MR, and they're basically pretty big and bad. Monopolies also participate in price discrimination, basically when you charge different consumers different prices based on different factors. We have 3 degrees of price discrimination. First degree price discrimination is when you charge your consumer the max willingness to pay, so the output is at the allocatively efficient point. Second degree price discrimination is basically menu pricing, where you pay more based on the option you choose. And then there's the third degree price discrimination, is basically where you charge different consumers based on income elasticity. Price elasticity of demand they have, or income elasticity demand they have. So like adults, their demand is income inelastic because they pretty much have a lot of money. But for students, actually price is income. Okay, wait, all wrong. It's price. Adults' demand is price inelastic because they work full time, they have money. But for students, their demand is price elastic. It's sensitive to changes in price because they don't have as much money, because they're teenagers, they don't have full-time employment, they probably just have savings or pocket money from their parents. That's the thing. So there's also 3 conditions which must be met by a monopoly for the price discrimination to work out. So a firm must be big enough to increase price without losing too much customers. So a monopoly must be big enough to have control over price. Secondly, a monopoly must have perfect information regarding the elasticity of demand of its consumers, because if they don't, they cannot target the pricing properly. And third is they have to limit reselling, because if they don't, then students would just resell their cheap tickets to adults for less, and monopoly would just miss out on profits, and price discrimination would just be pointless. So yeah. And there's also natural monopolies. Natural monopolies basically there's only one firm in the whole market, and it's most efficient for only one firm to be in the market. Why they work? Huge sunk costs and economies of scale. So some infrastructure like railways, like mobile networks, national grid, pipes, sewers, roads, it's the infrastructure which cannot be efficiently shared among different firms. So most likely it's just going to be run by one big firm, because it can benefit from economies of scale and provide the services for less money for the consumers, and with higher precision, efficiency, and quality. So national monopoly is basically when one firm dominates the market because it's the most efficient one. Then I forgot to mention 2 things. Okay, so there's N concentration ratio. It's basically the number of firms in the market and how much market share they hold. Like let me rephrase that, because I was yapping so much just now. It's the total market share the top N firms in the market own. Like N could be a different number, like 5. What's the total market share of the 5 biggest companies in the market? That's N concentration ratio. Also, there are firms' objectives. Profit maximization point is MC equals MR. Sales maximization point is AR equals AC. Then revenue maximization point is MR equals 0. And satisficing is when you make just enough to satisfy your shareholders or influencers, but do something else with the rest. And then there's also different efficiencies. There's allocative efficiency when MC equals AR. Then there is productive efficiency when AC and MC it's out at its lowest. It's MC equals AC. Then there is X inefficiency. It's when your average cost is higher than its potential minimum for its level of output. And then we have the X inefficiency when your and we have dynamic efficiency where you reinvest your money over time into innovation and technology, and it gives you long-term gains. That's dynamic efficiency. Whoa, that was so hard. Damn, that's like half of micro content so far, and we still have all of macro. Let's go to competition policy now. Wait, let me make sure I'm in the frame. Oh, it's so bright. Everything is so bright. I've been in the darkness for so long. I just want to be here. I just don't want to take it off. So competition policy. CMA is Competition and Markets Authority, is a regulatory body for competition in the UK markets, and it basically regulates markets and makes sure they're fair, and it tries to promote competition, choice, and consumer welfare. So, what type of regulation does CMA use? They have a merger policy. It's when they investigate harmful mergers. For example, if the annual combined turnover of firms exceeds £70 million, 70 million, or is 25% over of market share, like becomes a legal monopoly, then they will investigate the merger, and they will block the merger only if they conclude a negative impact on consumers throughout their investigation. Second thing they could do price regulation, basically telling the firm how much it could increase or decrease its prices by. So there's two things they could do. They could make the firm, there's two price regulation concepts. RPI plus K, basically RPI stands for, is basically a measure of inflation, and K is capital investment. So RPI is the price, how much the firm could decrease it to adjust to inflationary pressure, and K is how much extra a firm could charge to reinvest the money into its infrastructure, like into its capital, to be efficient and benefit the consumers. That's for firms which are efficient. Then secondly, there's RPI minus X. X. RPI minus X is for the firms which are not efficient, and it's basically to punish them. So RPI is measure of inflation once again. So a firm would be able to increase its prices by the level of inflation because proportionally cost of production increase for the firm, so it's fair. But efficiency gains, which is X, is basically how much more efficient a firm could be. So if currently the firm is inefficient, this number incentivizes a firm to be more efficient because it decreases the maximum potential price a firm could charge. Okay. Thirdly, they could tax. They could tax excessive profits to encourage firms to reinvest the money back into the business. So by taxing all of the profits above a certain threshold, the firms are encouraged to reinvest the profits back into the firm to avoid losing money in tax. So in theory, it should benefit the consumers because firms would constantly reinvest money back into its services and stuff. But there's a risk of inefficiency because if firms know that they will have to reinvest back, they will just not be as efficient and productive anymore because they'll have no incentive. So it's not that efficient. And then the fourth policy which CMA could use is quality standards. Quality standards like safety, hygiene standards, basically meant to regulate the firms and ensures that they deliver a good quality service to the consumers. The CMA could also help small firms grow or increase competition in the market. And the way they increase competition in the market is by deregulating the market, so less regulation, so it's easier for firms to produce and easier for small firms to join the market and compete. And there are other things as well. I don't remember that one. That's the first thing I actually forgot. I forgot what the other thing is. Tax breaks. They eliminate anti-competitive practices, and anti-competitive practices include predatory pricing, when firms cut below average variable cost, when the firms charge the price below average variable cost to limit competition in the short run. and there's also price collusion, and yeah, so the CMA, they make sure that firms do not participate in any of anti-competitive practices, and that's how they achieve competition and consumer welfare. Okay, there's also a concept called regulatory capture. Basically, when regulators might sympathize with the firm when they regulate it, because the top of the system is very connected and it's really concentrated, so people know each other, and like if my university friend is a regulator and he's regulating my firm, he's more likely to just be lenient and set my quality standard too high, too low, or like set the K in the RPI plus K formula too high, and I would basically end up overcharging consumers, and that's bad and makes it inefficient. So it's bad. For CMA and market regulation, I think that's everything there is. So there is. I just said there is. Yeah, that's everything. So next thing we have. Wait, let me drink first. I feel like a gangster smoking. Man, why am I doing this? I'm such a child. Okay, so wait. Let me remember what's next, because I kind of forgot. So we did basics, we did demand supply, we did elasticity, we did semi-economic response. Okay, yeah, labor markets, of course. Labor markets. I love labor markets. It's my favorite topic, man. I'm gonna be yapping so much now. Okay, so labor market is basically the other way around, because in this market, firms are the ones demanding and households are the ones supplying, because they supply the labor and firms need the labor to produce the output. Basically, circular flow with macro thing. So factors which affect and influence labor supply and demand. Cost, how much it costs to hire somebody. Productivity, how much it costs to how efficient the labor is, and if it's worth the money it's costing to hire. Also, wait, what the hell? I don't know. Depends on taxes, because if taxes are low, people are incentivized to supply labor, so it's going to be higher. And then there's benefits. So if transfer payments benefits are low, people are more incentivized to work and supply labor because they basically have no money to live on. Then there is benefits, income, non-pecuniary benefits. It's non-monetary benefits from the job, like I don't know, a private car. If you go to a job and you get your own car, then you're more likely to supply labor, even though they don't pay you as much. I didn't list any, I didn't list all of them, but these are the key ones, I think. Oh, migration. Wait. Migration. How much people migrate into the country, because if they migrate into the country, they increase the labor supply. Also, capital costs, because capital directly substitutes the labor. So if capital is affordable, then firms are going to demand capital instead of labor, and there's going to be less labor demand. And also there's capital costs, derived demand. One of the key ones. Oh my god, derived demand, because demand for labor derives from the demand for output. If there's no demand for output, there's no need for labor. So it's essential. And then there's also an idea of MRP. There's an MRP theory, marginal retail product, I think. Marginal revenue product. Yeah, marginal revenue product. It's basically an idea that it's an additional revenue a firm receives from selling an additional unit of output an extra worker produces. So basically the firms would hire as long as wage equals MRP. So the wage they pay the worker at least must be equal to the revenue they receive from selling things that the worker produces, because if it doesn't, then they will just make a loss, and there's no point of that extra employee there. And then that's that. Wow, I actually remember this. Okay, then we have monopsonies, basically just a monopoly in the labor market. Monopsonies is when there's one singular or just a dominant employer in the market, like an NHS. It's basically big, so it has control over wages, because there's no other places where workers could find employment, so they are forced to take the wage that monopsony is hiring for. monopsonies tend to hire below the MRP. So basically it's called exploitation, because workers work for less than their labor is worth, but they have no choice because there's nowhere else they could supply their labor. There are different policies you could use to fix this thing, like Machiavelli and monopsonies. You can use trade unions, because trade union is an organization that advocates for workers' rights, fair pay, working conditions, everything like that. And they use collective bargaining when they basically all collectively go on strike and bargain for higher wages. So trade union could be used to influence the monopsony. Also, we can use a national minimum wage, basically legally obligating a monopsony to pay workers a market price or above that of their MRP. And there's also that's everything, no? Yeah, that's that. Then in labor markets, we also have different concepts. So we have a concept of wage differential. Wage differential is when wage differences are caused by economic factors such as elasticity of labor supply and MRP of the worker. And it's legal because basically it's just you paying worker for what they're worth. But for wage discrimination, it's when there's a wage difference because of non-economic factors. So like, let's say you pay someone less because of their age or their gender or their sexuality or their race, and it's illegal because you're discriminating under some act of what it's called, equality at work, or like equal pay. You cannot pay them less because on these factors. At the same time, there is like a theoretical age discrimination for national minimum wage because of the age groups. Like different age groups have different national minimum wages, and the reason it's beneficial, even though young people get paid below their MRP. So let me explain that process. So firms in a normal market, they would mostly hire older people because they believe that older people have higher MRP because they're older and have more experience. So without a national minimum wage, young people would never get employment because older people appear more productive. But because national minimum wage allows the firms to pay young people below the market equilibrium wage, the firms are actually incentivized to hire younger people because now they cost less, and in some industries, young people can still produce the same MRP and productivity as the older worker. So now firms are more inclined to hire younger people, and it's good because firms have lower costs and the same output, and the young people are employed and gain skills and qualifications on the job. So it's good for the people and the economy. Okay. So, let me drink again. My throat is getting tired from all the talking. Yeah, just to make sure, let me make sure that thing is running, because if it doesn't, then it's gonna be bad. Oh my god, what the hell? Everything is so blurry. Okay, thank god it's running. Okay, it's running, it's good. We all set for income inequality. Actually, no, wait, yes. Income inequality. What is income inequality? Well, it's when people have different incomes. I kinda strained wage differences and wage differentials from income inequality. So income inequality is basically when different people get different pay, and sometimes it's based on economic factors, sometimes it's based on non-economic factors, and based on that, they can't really afford things. Okay, so then we have wealth inequality. Wealth inequality is a bit different. Wealth refers to your accumulated assets and how much money you have, and wealth inequality basically has people have more wealth than others, and why it happens. Reasons why it happens. Inheritance. Some people inherit wealth. Then we have RNG hypothesis. So R refers to rate of return, and G refers to growth. So R is rate of return on like assets, and G is growth for incomes. And the hypothesis states that R is higher than G. So people who are rich and have capital and assets, they can reinvest it to gain more capital and stuff like that. But poorer people who just rely on their income cannot do that. So in the long run, our rate of return for assets would bring more money to rich people than the income would bring to the poor people who rely on income solely. So people remain poor and have less wealth because of that. Then there's also discrimination at work, pay differences, and stuff like that. Solutions to that would be like national minimum wage, subsidies, providing things and stuff like that. Okay, so we have poverty as well, I think. Yeah, let's talk about poverty now. We have absolute poverty when people live on under $3 a day, and also we have relative poverty when people are poor relative to the country. In UK, it's when people earn less than 60% of median UK income. Reasons why poverty exists: intergenerational. So one reason is intergenerational. When people are born into a poor household, they are more likely to be poor because their parents can afford proper education and everything. So they grow with less opportunities in life, and they struggle to succeed because of that. Then we have child work, because in poor countries, many children have a job responsibility or take care of the elderly. So instead of focusing on education, they cannot really do that, and that's why they end up being poor, because they score lower on exams, they can't get higher paying jobs, they can't get into unis, so their MRP is lower, and they can't do that. Then we have recessions. During recessions, people are unemployed, so the poverty increases. Then you have benefits, when benefits are very, very low, and it also creates poverty. And yeah, there's a lot of things that cause poverty. It's just main ones I named just now. Solutions to poverty would be to provide education, improve infrastructure, and give financial aid to countries or like people in need, and that would be solutions. Whew, that was pretty cool. Okay, we did wealth, income, inequality, poverty. Next topic is production pros. Actually, no, next topic is inefficiency within firms. So inefficiency within firms, there's like, I forgot to mention that in the firms section. There's divorce of ownership from control basically means that people who run the firm daily, basically managers, are different from the people on the top, shareholders. They're different. Okay, so then it creates a principal agent problem. It's basically when shareholders, they own a stake at the firm, they want the firm to maximize profits so they get higher dividends. But managers, they prefer to maximize sales because it improves their reputation. So then the satisficing happens. So instead of going all out and being as productive as possible, managers, they just satisfies, and they just do just enough to satisfy the shareholders instead of actually being at the peak of their productivity. And it sometimes leads to inefficiency because they have conflicting interests with the shareholders, and it creates internal disparities. Next up, we could talk about production. Production theory, thesis. Wow. Okay, production. Production. Production is when you convert inputs into outputs. Manufacturing, on the other hand, is when you use raw materials to manufacture finished products. That's the key distinction. There are different things in production. There's specialization, is when countries, regions, people decide to focus on production of narrow range of goods. It's good because it makes people more efficient and productive at this specific thing, but there's a risk of interdependence. Not interdependence. There's a risk of occupational immobility because workers have a narrow range of skills, and if structural changes happen and the structure of employment changes, they wouldn't be able to find employment because they not only need a certain skill, like it happened in 1950s in north of England, where coal miners were left unemployed because they couldn't move on because they've been doing coal mining for the whole life and they couldn't switch. Then there's also, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, production. And there's also division of labor. Division of labor basically is when you divide the production process into different tasks, each performed by a specific group of people, and it makes the whole process more efficient because people become specialized at this specific task. But at the same time, there's a risk of inefficiency because different stages of production rely on each other, and if one group doesn't do their thing, the other group can't do their thing. So like in car making, if I didn't put the engine into the car, they cannot screw the screws on the engine, so it could cause internal inefficiency and risk. But at the same time, it decreases the production cost, so it's debatable. This production. Then there's also a law of diminishing returns to scale. So it's the law that states that if you add variable factors to a fixed factor, eventually in the long run, your output will decrease because you're going to be having too much, let's say, capital for too few workers, or too much workers for too few land. So like the factory is going to be overcrowded, people will bump into each other, they're not going to be as productive. Or there's going to be too much spare capacity in machinery and not enough people to operate it. And then there's also law of returns to scale, and it basically refers to how the output changes based off how you proportionally add factors of production. So it could be increasing returns to scale, decreasing returns to scale, or constant returns to scale. And different conditions cause different outcome. That's production process. Oh yeah, for behavioral economics, there's an idea of diminishing marginal utility. I forgot to talk about that. So it's basically an idea that every time you consume an additional unit, your utility decreases because you get fed up with the thing, basically, and it decreases over time. Okay, so we did productivity, we did that, it's labor productivity. Okay, economies of scale. Now, one of my favorite topics too. It's pretty easy. We have internal economies of scale. We have financial economies of scale. Large firms can negotiate with bankers for linear interest rates because large firms appear big enough to guarantee in-time debt repayment for banks, and banks are more willing and trustworthy of big firms. Then we have risk-bearing economies of scale. Basically, when large firms operate in different markets, they can cover losses in one market with profits from the other, so they don't really risk anything, unlike smaller firms. Then we have marketing one, because they can promote all the branches at once by buying adverts in bulk and stuff. Then we have purchasing one. Large firms can afford to buy things in bulk, like raw materials in bulk, because they form good relations with suppliers, and they can afford to buy in bulk, like a lot at once. They can buy a lot of raw materials at once, and that's why suppliers love them, because they just take in all of the raw materials and stuff. And then we have technical one. It's basically when large firms can afford better technology, which is more productive and cost efficient. Let's say I can afford efficient fridges, so in the long run I end up paying less for electricity, and small firms can't do that, so I end up saving costs. So my cost of production is lower. And then there's managerial economies of scale. Basically, when firms hire the best managers, because if a firm is big, it can. If a firm is big, all the cool managers want to work for the firm, because the firm can offer more benefits and perks at work. And small firms can't really do that because they have no money. So big firms end up hiring all the best managers who can cut costs and make laborers more productive, once again decreasing cost of production. And then externally, economies of scale could be related to infrastructure. Basically, when big firms locate themselves next to transportation or economic hubs because they have money and they can afford to do that. Let's say a firm is large enough, it can buy an office in central London and benefit from all the financial services over there. But small firm, it can't afford that, so it has to be like on the outskirts of London where nothing is available. Then there's also educational economies of scale externally, because if there is an educational establishment close to the firm would benefit because there would be a supply of qualified and educated labor, and in turn it would make the firm more efficient and productive, and cost of production would be lower. And we also have geographical economies of scale. It's when large firms tend to stick together and they benefit from shared knowledge, innovation, and transfer of technology. It's basically like Silicon Valley in USA, like where all the tech startups and all the tech bros reside, and they just do everything together. Like Facebook headquarters is there, Google headquarters is in the Apple headquarters is also in Silicon Valley. Also we have this economies of scale. Oh wait, I forgot to define economies of scale. How could I? Oh my god, I just sinned. I literally just did a sin. I didn't define economies of scale. Economies of scale are reductions in the average cost of production experienced by firms as they expand output and operate at minimal efficient scale point of the cost curve. Yeah. Whew. Okay, now we go diseconomies of scale. Diseconomies of scale is when a firm experiences increasing cost of production when it starts producing beyond its minimum efficient scale of output. So it's producing like beyond the optimal level. We have four main internal diseconomies of scale. We have control, basically when the firm is way too big, managers, they cannot keep up with all the workers, so some workers would slack off and they would, and the firm would miss out because they still pay them a wage and workers would be less productive. And then we have communication. In large firms, there's multiple layers of hierarchy, so the messages they get distorted and delayed over time, and it creates inefficiency because, oh my god, my glasses were down, what the hell. And over time it creates inefficiency because messages are slow and distorted and decision making is delayed, and sometimes when time matters it becomes critical to the firm. Then we have coordination. Basically, in large firms you have a lot of different departments, and if there is no coherence and between the departments, then there will be inefficiency and losses because firms would end up having internal conflicts all the time. And then there's motivation. When firms are way too big, individual workers feel less valued. They feel disposable because they're just numbers in the system and they don't feel like individuals. They sit in the office for 8 hours a day doing numbers on a spreadsheet, and then they go home to a wife and a mortgage at an interest rate of 10%. So that's why it's bad. And then externally, there's a diseconomies of scale externally because firms, they could struggle with infrastructure because if they overuse it, there's going to be traffic and it's going to increase the transportation costs back up, and that's everything that. Whew, we're almost done with micro. Micro is almost done. I'm so happy. Yo, I actually know this. I thought I'm going to be struggling. I know I'm going to be struggling with macro though, so stay for that. Stay tuned for that. Let me drink a bit. My straw broke because I was fiddling with it in my hands, and because water is wet, it dissolves the straw. Oh my god, oh my. Let me say this right now, yeah? Out of topic, just randomly, yeah? All this ecology, pro-sustainability shit, like, they made straws paper now, and because they're paper, they dissolve in the water, and they dissolve when my saliva contacts the straw, and they just last for like 10 minutes, and that's it. I know it's good for plants and like ocean and like turtles in the sea, but bro, when I drink something, I want the straw to be strong structurally. I want it to be integral. I want the straw to resist everything my lips throw at it. But when it's a paper thing, it's so annoying. Like, it becomes unusable. I'm ending up wasting the straw because it doesn't work anymore. See? And I was smart, like, in advance, I knew that it's gonna happen, so I had a water bottle. So I have to drink with a water bottle now. Finally, I can drink. Okay, let me place this somewhere when it's not gonna play the bottle somewhere. Somewhere there. Is it reaching the end? Okay, cool. Is the camera there? Wait, let me see. Okay, it's there. Okay, I was looking in the wrong direction the whole time. Oh my god! I hope that was not for long. I was staring there and the camera was here. Oh my god! I'm so sorry. Okay, last topic, I think. Yeah. Oh wait, no. Yes. Wait, no. Yes. No. Yes. Oh wait. Let me think. I forgot. No. Yeah. Last topic. Market failure. Because, yeah, market failure. Oh, market failure occurs when the market fails to supply a good or a service at the right price or quantity. There are two, there are two types of market failure: partial and complete. Partial market failure is when market fails to provide a good or service at the right price or quantity. But a complete market failure is when there's a missing market because the market just didn't provide it at all. Okay. So different reasons. Okay, wait. There are social costs. Basically, costs a society has to. Wait, no. Total cost, total benefit, marginal cost. Oh, wait. Marginal. I forgot. It's like there's marginal total cost. Okay, it's basically private cost plus social cost means total cost. And then there's private benefit plus social benefit equals total benefit, if I'm right. Then the socially optimum equilibrium for the output level is when marginal social benefit equals marginal social cost. So basically, we produce at a level where benefit equals to the cost. So it's literally at the perfect level. There's no higher cost society than there's benefit. So it makes sense. Okay, key reasons why we have market failure. Number 1, positive and negative externalities. Number 2, merit demerit goods. Number 3, information gaps. Number 4, public quasi-public goods. Number 5, we have labor immobility. Number 6, we have monopoly power. Number 7, we have wealth inequality. Let me go one by one. Let me go through each one by one. Okay, so first, have positive externalities. These are positive effects on people outside of the price mechanism. It's an effect on a third party. Basically, if I consume an apple, I become more healthy, so I demand less NHS services, and it's beneficial because another person would have access to the NHS service because I'm not using it. Okay, positive externalities. Wait, let me link it to. Actually, no, or not. Oh, yes. Okay, positive externalities could be from merit goods or they could be from production. So, positive externality in production is basically when you produce a good which brings benefit to say, like, I don't know, you produce social, like solar panels, you produce electric cars, you produce recyclable straws that I just talked about. So, it's good for society because there's less pollution, there's less wastage, there's less everything. So, yeah, but free market tends to undersupply goods with positive externalities in production because people underestimate the long-term benefits, so they tend to underconsume it. Like, why would I overpay for a £60,000 £60,000 Tesla? Yeah, if I can buy a diesel truck for £15,000. So that's why people underestimate the benefits because you're essentially paying 45,000 extra for ecology. Okay, so yeah. Then we have positive externalities in consumption. Basically, when you consume a merit good, merit goods are goods which tend to be underconsumed in the free market economy because people underestimate their long-term benefits. So merit goods could be like, I don't know, healthcare, healthy food, gym memberships, everything like that. And there is market failure arising from positive externalities in consumption because people consume less than they should of this good, and in turn it harms the economy and firms because people are not productive enough, people are not demanding enough, and people are not just being enough. So that's the market failure. Then we have negative externalities in production market failure, basically when you produce something and it creates pollution and it harms the third party because it creates noise pollution, it creates air pollution, causes like lung cancer because of harmful gases that are released during the manufacturing, which is pretty ironic because when you make lithium-ion batteries for electric cars, you produce so much pollution. Never mind. So yeah, and we also have negative externalities in. Oh yeah. And then we have negative externalities in consumption. So demerit goods. Demerit goods are the goods which tend to be overconsumed in the free market economy because people overestimate their short-term benefits. So demerit goods include things like guns, alcohol, smoking, vapes, basically all the bad things. And people mainly consume them because they're habit forming. Also gambling as well. Because they're habit forming. Like you consume alcohol, you form a habit of consuming alcohol. You smoke, it creates a habit. You gamble, it creates a habit. Like you have a gambler's fallacy. You believe that one must spin and you're gonna win, but it's not gonna work like that. So don't do that, please. Then we have that negative externalities, merit goods. Next up we have information gaps. So sometimes people lack information to make rational choices because it's asymmetric in a transaction, and that causes market failure because they misallocate their resources during a transaction. So let's say I buy an old car, but the seller knows more about the car than I know, and he's gonna be telling me, oh, this car's pretty new, and I'll believe him and I'll buy it, and I'll find out that it's pretty old and it's rusty on the inside. So I ended up wasting my money because I did not maximize my money's utility because the car I bought was pretty bad. Then we have Yeah, we have that. We also have public and quasi-public good market failure. Okay, let's talk about public goods first. Public goods are the goods which are non-excludable and non-rivalrous. So you cannot exclude someone from using the good, and you cannot, and if you consume the good, it does not decrease the amount available to others. And ooh, and there is a free rider problem arising from public goods because okay, wait, let me talk about free rider problem then. Free rider problem is basically when you expect other people to pay for the service or the good, but when everyone does that and when everyone else thinks that other people would pay for it, no one actually demands it. So demand stays at zero and society does not receive the service or the good, even though society needs it. So that creates market failure because people need the thing, but they don't demand it because they want others to pay for it, and there's no demand, so the firms have no incentive to supply, and they end up not supplying. So government is forced to provide public goods free of charge to everybody to create universal access and solve this market failure. We also have quasi-public goods. Quasi-public goods are goods which have traits of both public and private goods. Let's say we have roads. During rush hour traffic, they become excludable because there's less space. You cannot plug so you can exclude someone from using the road. But when there's no rush hour and it's just midday, they are not excludable because there's space for cars to go on the road. So these are just goods that have both traits of public and private goods. Additionally, we have the thing called tragedy of the commons. Also creates market failure. So basically, it's when commons is basically a common resource. Common resources include things like fish, trees, air, and stuff like that. So if these common goods are consumed sustainably, then nature would replenish them over time, and the good would be non-rivalrous and non-excludable. But the free market economy, it incentivizes firms to exploit freely available resources. So firms would end up over-consuming these common resources, and they would consume so much that nature wouldn't have enough time to naturally replenish it. So now these resources become excludable and rivalrous. So it's bad. So the government has to use regulation like quotas to prevent that. Like, let's say if they do too many excessive fishing, fish population wouldn't have enough time to reproduce, and they would just end up making fish go extinct because they fished all the fish out of the sea. Okay, so that's the one. And then we have labor immobility, market failure. Basically, there are two different types. Occupational immobility, when people lack the right skills to move between different jobs and they cannot access a job because they don't have the skills. And you can solve this by providing education, training, apprenticeships, and yeah, things like that. And there's also geographical immobility, when workers struggle to move between different areas for work because they lack money and they can afford it. So you can invest into infrastructure or provide relocation subsidies to the families that are affected. Another market failure is, we already skimmed through it. It's basically monopoly power. It's CMA basically regulates, making sure that monopoly doesn't exploit people too much. And wealth inequality is a bit straightforward and is a bit short. So because there's wealth inequality, poor people have less money and less disposable income, so they tend to miss out on the benefits of having money. So like they can't pay for like spa, they can't pay for like premium, high quality food and stuff like that. So they tend to miss out, and they basically, it's market failure because they're not really maximizing their money utility, and they're not being productive and healthy. So yeah, I think that's everything for micro for once. Let me think if I forgot anything. Let me recite everything I remember. This, that, yes. Yes, we did this. Mention that. Over there, incomplete, partial. I could also talk about solutions to market failure because I didn't really mention it. Okay, so we can say minimal prices, maximum prices. We can talk about subsidies. We can say tradable pollution permit. We can use provision of information to give people information so they can make more conscious choices. We can use regulation, like bans or restrictions on the access to the goods for like demerit goods or goods with negative externalities or like things. Yeah, we can do specific taxes, so it's harder for firms to produce goods with negative externalities. We can use other things as well. I don't remember them really. Wait, let me think. Max, minimum prices, and provision of public goods. I already mentioned it before. And there's also stockpiles, buffer stock. But buffer stock is pretty weird. I don't know. Buffer stock, the government buys the crops during a good harvest. So when there is a poor harvest, the government has like the food and it can give it to people so they don't starve to death. That's the whole essential concept of buffer stock. Yeah, next up, wow, we finished micro. I think that's everything. For real, wait, let me put my glass on. Wait. Is the camera there? Please, tell me I'm looking at the camera. Okay, wait, let me drink before we go to macro. Oh my god, I'm actually halfway through. I'm so happy. Oh, that's more. Good. Ooh. Guys, how are you feeling for tomorrow's exam? Do you think it's gonna be fun? Do you think it's gonna be easy, hard? What do you think? What do you think it's gonna be on? Is camera there? Wait. Yeah, good. Okay, cool. Wow, I'm so excited to go into macro because macro is one of my hardest parts of economics. I don't know why. It's just weird. There's so many lists of like things and factors which could influence the outcome. Wow. Okay, let's start. Let's start macro with circular flow of income. Okay, income is the annual inflow of money and you receive. It's your income. Then we have wealth. Wealth is just the amount of assets you accumulate, and wealth also can be used to generate income. Money travels in a circular flow in the economy because households buy the output of firms. Firms pay households a wage. Then there's and money travels in a loop. But at the same time, there are injections and withdrawals from the circular flow. So injections include government spending, investment, and exports because people from abroad buy your things and they give you money. And then there's withdrawals or like leakages, so it's savings because people save instead of buying, so money leaves the circular flow. Then there's also taxes because you give the money to the government and the money is not spent. And there's also imports because the things you import, you pay money abroad, so it goes outside of the circular flow. And if the money leaves the circular flow faster than it arrives, then the economy is going to shrink because basically money is leaving. Then there's also different effects on the circular flow. We have a multiplier effect, basically when initial injection into the economy causes a wider impact on transaction volume and economic activity. Let's say the government hires more teachers and these teachers start demanding more goods of the firm. The firm sells the goods to the teachers, then the firm has higher profits, firm reinvests and then there's more employment. It has like a whole chain link of economic activity after the initial injection. And then there's also an accelerator effect, basically when increase in demand signals to firms that they should increase supply to make higher profit. Whoa, wait a second, marginal. Whoa, I think I forgot this thing. In micro, we have things called marginal propensity. That's the one. Oh my god. Remember in micro, and the first thing I started talking about, I said that I forgot some things at the end. That's the thing I forgot. In micro, in the basics of micro, we have marginal propensity to consume concept. It's basically how much of an additional income you're going to spend on consumption. And if it's high, it's good. Then we have marginal propensity to invest. Basically, no, that's not micro, that's macro. I'm doing right. Okay, good. Marginal propensity to invest is basically... marginal propensity to save. Marginal propensity to save basically refers to how likely people are to save their additional income. And if it's high, then it's pretty bad because it's going to shrink the economy. Yes. So that's that. And in the circular flow content, there's also... Whoa, I just thought about it. Wait, I forgot. Wait. See, I'm already struggling. I know. I told you macro is going to be hard. Macro is going to be hard for me. There is a thing called wait, let me think, please. Don't leave my head, please. Come back, thought. Come back, please. No. It left my brain. I can't remember. It's too late. Where? If I could make cuts in the video, I would just sit and wait till it comes back, but I can't do many cuts, so I don't want you to sit here for like hours. I mean, you will end up sitting for hours eventually, so... Okay, let's ignore for now. That's the circular flow of income. Yes. Yay. Levels of disposable income also affect how much people can consume in the economy. Wow. Okay. Let's talk about aggregate demand now. Aggregate demand is the total demand for all goods and services within the economy. It's made of key components. It's the formula for AD is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So C stands for consumption, I stands for investment, G stands for government spending, X stands for exports, and M stands for imports. So basically measures all of the money going in and out of the country and how much activity there is and how much money is injected into the economy, and that's how AD is formed. What factors shift the AD? Level of income levels, size of benefits, size of pensions, confidence of investors, confidence of consumers, state of the economy, levels of disposable income, wealth effect. Wealth effect is basically when people have assets, and if assets are high in value, then people will be more likely to spend because they feel more wealthy. So that has an impact as well. Wealth effect. And for pensions as well, there's this small thing, like if young people know their pension is high, they would consume now instead of saving for when they're older. So because pensions are high, not only older people can consume more, but younger people will be more likely to consume too, because they know that when they get older, the pension will cover all of their needs. So when they're young, they don't need to save money for their retirement. That's this thing. Oh, whoa. Well, king in the castle. Oh man, I love Borat. So types of demand. Is that micro or macro? No, it's let me think. Wait, that's a good one. I already talked about it micro, but I don't know if it's micro, so I'll just mention it briefly here. We have composite demand, we have competing demand, we have joint demand, and we have joint supply. That's macro. I know now that's macro, but I mentioned it in micro. I mean, no one cares really because I have paper freeze about both topics, so it's fine. Yeah, okay, let's do aggregate supply now. Aggregate supply basically refers to all of the supply in the economy, like total output in the economy. SRES is short run aggregate supply, basically aggregate supply in the short run, how much firms supply in the short run, and it's affected by the cost of production. And LRES is aggregate supply in the long run and how much firms supply in the long run. So, and it's affected by quantity and quality of factors of production. There are different things that affect also commodity prices, like commonly used resources like oil. They also impact supply. So there's two different views and approaches to LRAS. There is a classical view where the LRAS is a vertical line because no further increase of output is possible because all of the current resources are fully utilized. But Keynesian view says that you can increase output because there is spare capacity, but it will come at a cost of high inflation, because when you try to overuse your capital and there's higher demand for capital in the economy, it becomes scarce and expensive. So it creates inflation. So that's what they say. Yeah. Ooh, I'm really struggling. I can feel that no less. I actually feel that no less, despite me saying everything correctly. Where's my bubble? Oh. Despite me being like mostly correct about this, I'm already struggling so much because I don't know, it just feels hard. I have all of macro to talk about. Oh my god, man, I just want to go sleep. What the hell was that? Did everything spill? No? Okay, it's good. Okay, whoa. Now, yes, yes. Oh yeah, no, yes or no? Huh? No, wait, yeah. I already talked about things that affect aggregate supply, but that was for micro. Yeah, that's everything for supply. Next up, we're gonna talk about next. Talk about government objectives. Yay, government objectives, the easiest topic known to mankind. Okay, government has four main macroeconomic objectives in its macroeconomic policy. One is economic growth, basically increase in real GDP over a year, so they produce more the next year than the year they produced previously. It's good because it increases welfare of people in the economy because there's more goods, there's more choice, there's more good things, I guess. Then there's low inflation. They try to keep the target of 2% plus or minus 1% to keep the price level stable and to keep purchasing power pretty good and to keep people's savings okay, because if there's high inflation, people's savings become worthless and people feel poor and there's recession, stagnation, hysteresis. No one really wants that, okay? So yeah. Then there's low unemployment, when the government tries to minimize unemployment, so there's more people who are economically active and employed. And there's balance of payments. They're basically making sure that exports equal to imports, so it's stable, because if it wasn't stable and more money was leaving the economy than was getting into the economy, then the economy would shrink and there would be less GDP and economic activity and it would be bad. So the government objective is to make sure that the economy is balanced in terms of trade, so its trade balance is in equilibrium. So we measure real GDP. We measure economic growth with real GDP. There's nominal GDP not adjusted to inflation, and there's real GDP adjusted to inflation. Problems with using nominal GDP as a measure of economic growth include relative inflation, uncertainty, and exchange rates. Because it's not adjusted to the price level, if we see an increase in nominal GDP, we don't really know if it was higher output or if it was the price level. So this uncertainty makes it inefficient as a measure of economic growth. Yeah, and it's also not just to exchange rates, so it's gonna be fluctuating all the time, so it's pretty useless. And then real GDP also has its limitations. Real GDP is GDP adjusted to inflation, but it's limited to it doesn't account which type of good is produced. So the GDP might be high, but the economy might be producing goods which are not beneficial for society. Like the whole economy could be built upon demerit goods, and it's bad, even though GDP might appear high. So yeah. Also, it ignores underground economies which are hidden and go under the radar. It also ignores subsistence economies, basically economies where people produce their own goods and services. Like if you own farmland, you'll produce your own cheese and milk, and you're not going to buy it, and you're not going to sell it to anyone. So that goes under the radar and is not measured in GDP. So statistically, your country might look poor, but because people in the country own land and they can produce their own stuff, their standard of living will still be high. We also have that's that. Also, there's a problem with using a real GDP per capita as a measure. Actually, no, people. Oh yeah, population size, of course. Population size. Oh my god, yes. Population size impacts. What was I talking about? I forgot my point. What? Wait, what? Wait, whoa. I just what? Wait, where was I? What did I just talk about? Oh my god, I actually forgot. Wait. Yes, subsistence. Oh, limitations of GDP. Yes, real GDP. Okay, yeah, real GDP might be high, but if the population is also high, then every person in the economy would only receive a small fraction of that GDP. So real GDP, if it's high, it's not necessarily meaning that economy is doing really well and people are well off, because population might be super high. Wait, let me adjust it to your camera. Am I looking at camera? Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, that's the thing. Now, low inflation, the way we measure the price level is by using CPI and RPI. CPI is Consumer Price Index. It's basically the basket of goods of essential items like milk, bread you buy daily. And RPI is basically basket of goods that also includes mortgage prices. How is the process done? So ONS, Office of National Statistics, they survey 5,000 households on the price of the 752 most common items bought and proportion of income spent on it. Then they go to retailers, physical and online retailers, and survey them on how much they charge for these goods as well. Then they calculate a weighted average overall, and that's how they determine the price level. Limitations of CPI. CPI is limited because it does not include mortgages. CPI is also limited because it does not include the quality of the good. So some people might just buy high quality goods, but it's going to appear as inflation on the actual measure. Does not account for unusual spending habits. So like if you buy very weird goods which are not a part of 752 common goods, then it's not going to be accounted for in inflation. And inflation is going to appear high. I mean, inflation is going to appear low even though it might be high. So that's why it's pretty bad. And then we have unemployment. Unemployment is measured with labor force survey. You just ask, it's like an international organization. You can find out how many people are unemployed. Or you can use a claimant count, just count how many people claim unemployment benefits. But at the same time, it's also vague because some people hide their unemployment because they're ashamed. So they don't share the fact that they're unemployed and don't claim benefits. So it's going to be an inaccurate measure. Ooh, we did like what, 15% of macro. I want to drink again, bro. This room is getting so hot. Wait, where's my ball? Yes, right here. When this is gonna end, I'm just gonna go to sleep and sleep like an angel. Okay. A lot of fun things are coming, so stay tuned, I guess. Oh, this is distraught. Camera is there, right? Somewhere here. Yeah. Wait, let me check if it's running, because if it wasn't running this whole time, I would be so pissed. Ooh, I almost fell off my chair. That would be so funny if it actually did. Camera's right there. Well, yes, camera's right there. Okay, so now we could talk about balance of payments. No, we could talk about inflation, I guess. Inflation is basically when there's a sustained increase in the general price level. Then hyperinflation is when the price level increased by more than 50% in a month. Yeah. Then we have disinflation, is when the rate of inflation has slowed down. We have two types of inflation. We have cost push inflation, basically when the cost of production increases and firms reduce the supply. So in the short run, we have inflation. And then there's demand pull inflation, when basically people demand too much goods and firms cannot satisfy the demand and they cannot supply as much. So they end up rationing the goods and that creates inflation. Yeah, that's inflation. And there's also a wage price spiral. It's basically a trap. When there's inflation, workers would demand higher wages, and if firms agree and pay higher wages, then the cost of production would also increase again, and that would create an infinite self-fulfilling cycle where firms would constantly be paying higher wages and workers would constantly be demanding wages because price level is increasing, and it's a trap thing. Inflation also happens because of speculation. When people anticipate inflation, they'll buy things now, and if they demand them a lot, then inflation happens again. And there's also asset price bubbles, basically when people expect things to increase in price and they demand it right now, and they end up overvaluing the good in the market, and then when they realize that it's not going to appreciate, they all start selling it at once, and that increases supply dramatically, but demand drops, and that creates super big recession. So don't do that. Yeah, and that's all the inflation stuff. Ooh, interesting. Oh, another cause of inflation, by the way. There's quantity theory of money thing. Basically, Fisher's formula of money, I guess. It's basically mv equals pt, like m times v equals p times t. So m stands for money supply, v stands for velocity of money, basically how much it changes hands, and then p stands for price level, and then t stands for transaction volume. So according to Fisher's formula, if money supply increases faster than transaction volume, then the price level would increase, causing inflation, because there's too much money supply and there is not enough economic activity and transactions to facilitate the additional money they inject into the economy. And then there's also just quantity theory of money. So this thing is basically saying that money supply equals to price level, because in the short run contracts are fixed and transaction volume is like constant or something. So the increased money supply directly impacts the price level without like all the different things that Fisher considers. So that's the thing. Yeah, let's do taxes now. Governments use taxes to raise revenue and fund essential services. They also use taxes to influence behavior, redistribute income for transfer payments, correct market failure, pay interest on national debt, and other fun things like that. We have different types of taxes. We have direct taxes. The taxes are paid directly to the government and are levied on profits and incomes. We have income tax, tax on income of an individual. We have corporate tax, tax on profits of a firm. We have real estate tax. We have wealth tax. We have capital gains tax. We have inheritance tax. Inheritance tax is basically a tax on the transferal of wealth after someone's death. Then we have indirect taxes, taxes which are indirectly paid to the government. They are levied on goods and services like VAT, value-added tax. We have specific tax. We have stamp duties. We have excise duties. We have that's everything. We have tariffs. These are all indirect taxes. There's also like budgets. Like, oh wait. There are three tax structures. There's proportional tax structure. So everyone pays the same tax rate regardless. There is a progressive tax system where you pay more if you earn more, and then there's regressive tax system where you pay less tax if you earn more. And so we have budget, like government budget is basically how much money you have available to spend on things. And if it's balanced, then tax receipts, tax revenue is equal to the spending government has. If it's in surplus, then the government receives more money in tax revenue than they're spending. And if it's in deficit, if there's a budget deficit, the government would have higher spending than they receive money in tax. And to counter that, government, and when budget deficit is accumulating over time, it becomes national debt. Basically, government has to borrow money from other organizations to cover the deficit in the economy, and that accumulates and creates interest and national debt. And to help government, the government has treasury bills or like bonds. Basically, it's an IOU obligation, which well, my eye hurts really bad. What the hell? Wait. Ooh. It's basically an obligation which when the government sells shares to like private people and promises to pay back with interest, like the coupon rate and yields. So that's how they raise extra money when they're in a budget deficit. Oh, yeah, that's everything for taxes. We have, what do we have next? Oh, my worst two topics is exchange rates and like balance of payments. Okay, let's talk about balance of payments first. Balance of payments is a national account of all inflows and outflows of money a country receives with the rest of the world. So we have current account. It consists of capital and current account consists of trade in goods, trade and services accounts basically for all exports and imports of goods and services. We have primary income, basically income from cross-border factors of production. And we have secondary income is basically one-way transfers, like remittance. Remittance is a one-way transfer payment that people do when they work abroad and they send money back to their family. And there's capital account. Capital account basically measures all the financial flows of money. So we say we have direct investment, long-term investment, portfolio investment, basically shares, bonds, issuances. It also accounts for other investment, also accounts for hot money flows and speculation. So that's the one. The budget balance of payments could be in deficit because of different factors. When people buy too many things from abroad, or when the country is not exporting too much, it's going to be in the deficit. I don't remember the actual factors that contribute, but if I see them in the exam, I'll know straight away. And to counter that and to help reduce the balance of payments deficit, the government has three approaches. They could do expenditure reducing policies aiming to reduce expenditure. For example, by taxing people more, the people would have less money, so they would demand less inputs. Expenditure switching policies is when government tries to make domestic goods more appealing. So instead of importing, consumers would actually buy domestically. And then there's supply side policies. They make domestic exports more competitive, and if they are demanded more abroad, then balance of payments would be balanced because they would export more basically. That's everything for balance of payments, I think. Yes. Yeah. Then we have exchange rate. Oh, that's gonna be the whole exchange rates. Exchange rate is basically a value of the currency expressed in terms of another currency, and currencies are traded on foreign exchange markets. So in UK citizens supply pounds, and people from abroad demand pounds. So when the currency could appreciate, so it's basically increasing in value, or it could depreciate, it could decrease in value. What determines the value of the currency? The supply and demand of the currency. Why is currency demanded? For many things. Tourism, when tourists go into your country, they demand the currency. Speculation, when people anticipate your currency to appreciate in value, they demand it. Exports, imports, when you buy or someone else buys, they demand currency. And trade, speculation. I forgot the fourth one, honestly. I forgot the fourth one. That's like the second thing I forgot. Okay, it's fine. Yeah, that's what impacts the demand for the currency. What impacts the supply? Just the value of the currency, I guess. Okay, what do we have next? We have different exchange rate systems. We have a fixed exchange rate system. It's when a currency is fixed and it's pegged to another currency, and the government frequently intervenes to maintain the peg. So it's not affected by market forces, it's just affected by the other currency it's pegged to. Second one is managed exchange rate. It's exchange rate which fluctuates with the supply and demand, but government could intervene to decrease excessive appreciation or depreciation, and it requires constant governmental supervision and maintenance. And then we have free exchange rate. I think it's called free exchange rate. Basically, the exchange rate that floats with the market forces, and it's not controlled by the government. And it's basically pretty good because it does. It's high risk, high gain wait. Focus. Stop yapping. It's good because it adjusts to inflationary pressures globally, and there's no need to constantly manage it. But at the same time, it's bad because you might import inflation from abroad, and if there's like economic shocks, your country will be impacted. That's the negative side. Okay, next up, what we have for exchange rate. When currency is high in value, your balance of payments is usually in deficit because relative to other countries, your nationals have less purchasing power, so they demand less imports. Yeah, and exports would be higher for foreigners, so your exports will decrease and imports will increase because people can buy more. And when the currency is low in value, your exports become more competitive. So foreigners would buy more of your exports, and your balance of payments would be in surplus, most likely. So that's how it is. Yeah, there's nothing else for exchange rates, right? Am I forgetting something? Speculation, hot money flows, real. I think that's everything. Yeah. So what's next topic? Wow, we actually covered so many things so far. We covered the circular flow. We covered ASAD, taxes, government objectives, exchange rate, inflation. Oh wait, why did I do inflation but didn't do deflation? Deflation is when there's a sustained decrease in the general price level. Then there's a thing called deflationary spiral, when the deflation forces people to delay purchases because they anticipate further decreases in price and they want to wait a bit to buy things for cheaper. But eventually what ends up happening is that everyone just waits and nothing happens, and it continues to decrease in a spiral, and it just makes the whole economy stagnant and forces the economy to enter recession because there's no transaction and demand and economic activity because everyone's waiting to buy for cheaper, and it's never going to happen. Then there's two types of deflation. Malignant deflation is the harmful deflation because it happens when there is a deficit of demand. There's not enough demand, so firms don't supply, and it shrinks real GDP, and it's really bad. Benign deflation is good because it's usually caused by technological advancements or increase in output. It's basically when you have higher supply and the price level drops because now there's more goods in the economy. It's pretty good. That's everything for deflation. Causes of deflation: unemployment, people don't have money to buy things, recession, like economic shocks, government austerity, high taxes, low benefits, low pensions. Wow. Okay, now we have economic cycle to talk about. So economic boom is the stage in the economic cycle when the economy is producing above its potential, and the recession is when it's producing below its potential. So let's talk about output gaps. Let me explain the diagram first. So I have a straight line. We have this like wave that looks like a DNA helix. So it's basically when the economy is in the boom, it's producing above its potential, so it has a positive output gap, and actual growth is higher than potential trend rate of growth. But then it has a slump when it slows down. It goes down, it goes into the recession. Then we're underperforming according to the trend rate of growth. And then we go back up because this side is called recovery, and then we achieve the economic boom again, and it goes into waves consistently. Okay, now positive output gaps, negative output gaps. Okay, positive output gap can be characterized by high output economic growth, demand pull inflation, budget balance or surplus, and high levels of employment. Oppositely, negative output gap can be characterized by high unemployment, deflation or low inflation, budget deficit, and stagnation or recession. That's the traits of a negative output gap. So yeah, actual growth is actual growth the economy experiences, and potential growth is the potential which economy could experience if it utilized all of its resources and spare capacity efficiently. Now we could talk about unemployment. It's pretty brief. Okay, unemployment is basically people who are unemployed. Let me provide a more clear definition a bit later. So we have five main types of unemployment. We have wage deficient, classical unemployment, basically when the wage is above the equilibrium wage, so firms cannot hire as many workers and creates excess labor supply, and there's unemployment. Then we have cyclical or demand deficient unemployment. There's no demand for goods, So there's no demand for labor because it derives from the demand for goods. Then we have structural unemployment. Basically, structural unemployment is when this economic structure changes and sectors of the economy shift, but people don't have time or the skills to adapt, so they end up being unemployed. Then there's frictional unemployment, when people are unemployed in between jobs. There's seasonal unemployment, when you are unemployed because your labor is only demanded during specific seasons. Like, let's say you're an ice cream worker, you sell ice cream, but it's winter now, so no one's gonna buy ice cream in the winter, so you basically have no one to pay for your labor. Okay, now let's do a lot of proper definitions for the unemployment. So economically active people are people of working age who are working or are actively seeking work. Economically inactive people are people of working age who are not actively working or looking for work. So the unemployed people are the people who are economically active but unemployed. Then workforce is the amount of economically active people as a percentage of working age population, I think. So next up we have working age. So working age in UK is 16 to 66 years old, and youth workforce is going to be 16 to 24 years old. That's all the terminology for employment. Yes. Okay, we did economic cycle, we did employment, we did that, we did that. Oh, we're actually like halfway through macro. That's pretty interesting. Okay, next we have policies in the economy, which government might adopt to try to boost AD or boost AS or just revive the economy because it's kind of dead. So we have fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is when the government uses taxes and government spending to influence AD. They could change income tax, corporation tax, benefit size, pension size. They could spend on infrastructure, education, stuff like that. And based on the economic conditions, they could either decrease or increase those things to have a certain impact on AD. I'm not going to go into detail because if I'll go into separate contractionary fiscal and expansionary fiscal, it's gonna delay the whole video. Like, bro, it's so obviously just like you lower taxes when you need to stimulate the AD, and you make it higher when you need to contract the AD. Like, I'm not gonna go into detail for that because it's way too obvious. Then we have monetary policy. Fiscal policy is controlled by the government and central bank, but the monetary policy is purely by bank. The bank uses interest rates, quantitative easing, to influence the economy because it impacts interest rate. I mean, it impacts savings, mortgages, and investment levels. So when they need to stimulate AD, they make interest rate lower, so it's cheaper to borrow. So firms are more likely to borrow money and invest, and people are more likely to borrow money and consume. So that's how it works. And then quantitative easing is when they basically make a bunch of money in the system and they give it to commercial banks to lend out, and increases money supply, but also could create inflation because there's more money in the economy now. That's the monetary policy. And there's also a monetary policy committee made of 8 members who meet 9 times a year to decide on the interest rate changes, and they have like chief economist and like head something, I forgot what their names are. And that's monetary policy. We have demand side policies, which are fiscal monetary policies, because they influence the aggregate demand, and we have supply side policies which influence aggregate supply. And there's two types of supply side policies. We have interventionist and market-based policies. Okay, interventionist policies is when the government directly intervenes into the market, like investing or subsidizing education and infrastructure and training and apprenticeship schemes to increase supply. Or they could use an indirect market-based approach and just reform pensions, change taxes, change laws, regulations to make it easier for firms to increase supply on their own. just basically helping, assisting them to decrease production costs. And that's how they achieve the efficiency. What else do we have to talk about? I talked about this, that, whoa. We almost reached, what is it? Globalization? No, I'm wrong. No, wait. The topics I haven't discussed yet are globalization, financial markets, economic development. Oh, there's actually just 3. No way. If I forget like a big chunk of topics, that would be so bad, because I didn't stay here for like 3 hours yapping about all this for nothing. Okay, I need to be safe and play safe here. It did that, yes. Economic policies. Globalization. Yeah. Globalization. Let me drink. I guess that's everything, because we have only left with globalization, economic development, and financial sector, if I'm not forgetting anything. And I feel like I actually forgot something, and it makes me stressed. But I don't really have choice because I forgot what it is. Okay, let's talk about globalization then. Globalization is increased interconnectedness between countries, regions, in terms of trade, political cooperation, economies, exchange, labor transfer, and stuff like that. So, specialization is when countries focus on the production of goods which they're good in, and basically comparative advantage is when you produce something. If a comparative advantage is when you produce more than another country, but at a lower opportunity cost. So you give up less than the other country, so you have superiority in this good or service. So the theory of comparative advantage states that countries should specialize in the goods where they have the lowest opportunity cost, and then they should trade with each other for the sake of efficiency, global output, and well-being of all. Because if all countries do the things they're good in and trade with other countries, then eventually every country would just end up buying things at the cheapest price and with the lowest opportunity cost, and that would make the whole global thing more efficient. There are key assumptions about this comparative advantage theory. So it assumes there's no cost of transportation. It assumes there's no trade barriers. It assumes constant returns to scale, and it assumes 2 other things that I forgot. So it's pretty ignorant and unrealistic, because the world is a bit more complex than that. So globalization is beneficial because it increases movement of trade, financial flows, labor, capital, technology, and stuff like that. Globalization was made possible by advancements in transportation, advancements in IT, containerization, basically big ships, container ships. And all these things contribute to globalization because they make it accessible. And there's also a trade liberalization when there's liberal trade policies, which basically make it easy and cheap and affordable for countries to trade. So, yeah. At the same time, there are trade barriers because some countries decide to have trade barriers. So we have tariffs, just taxes, we have quotas, limits, we have subsidies, which make some countries' exports more competitive, but it could be harmful to other countries. And we have competitive devaluation, when countries intentionally lower their exchange rate to make their exports more competitive. Why some countries decide to have protectionist measures to protect health and safety, because some countries might just sell some slack output into the country and it's dangerous and stuff like that. National sovereignty, because countries will be autonomous and produce their own stuff instead of relying on other people to produce their own goods. Then it's going to be Yeah, protecting infant industries in the country domestically, protecting employment domestically, preventing structural unemployment. Um, then we have trade blocks. Trade blocks is basically when some countries form alliances in terms of trade. We have free trade areas where members of a trade bloc decide to eliminate protectionist measures among themselves. We have a customs union, is basically a free trade area where members don't have protectionist measures for the members, and they also have an additional external tariff for all the non-members. Additionally, we have customs. Yeah, that's customs union. We have a common market as well. Is basically when a customs union decides to eliminate all the restrictions on the movement of labor, capital, and finance for its members, like the European Union. Then there's also monetary union, which basically has a common currency and they share the same monetary policy, like the European Union, like they have European Bank and stuff. Yeah, that's the trade blocks. What do I talk about next? There's also World Trade Organization. It's basically an organization that tries to resolve trade disputes and make sure that everyone complies with the international trade agreements. Yeah, that's the whole purpose of this organization. They just have rounds of talks with trade blocks and other people and other countries to make sure that everything is good and efficient. Ooh, that's everything for globalization, is it? I think it is. Globalization, yes, beneficial. Globalization is beneficial because it increases trade, it increases choice, it decreases prices, and it increases welfare for the consumers if companies trade globally. At the same time, there are negative sides to globalization. For example, there is imported inflation. You can import inflation from abroad if you rely on raw materials from other countries. There's risk of structural unemployment. There's risk of infant industry being affected because it has to compete with foreign firms as well. There's a lot of other things as well. I just can't remember them all. Yeah, a lot of stuff. Let's talk about economic development. Oh my god! I asked her so much. Oh, they've been closed for so long that if I move my pupil, it just hurts like shit. Because well, humans are not meant to have their eyes closed for so long without sleeping. Wait. Oof. I feel like I'll need an eye surgery after this. That was a bad idea. Why did I blindfold myself? At least you know that I'm not cheating because I can't see anything. Am I even looking at the phone? Is it right there? Someone. Where's my table? Yes, my table's here. My table's here. So the phone must be right there. Okay, good. Let's talk about economic development. Economic development refers to how developed the countries are and what their infrastructure, education, and social system looks like. So we measure the economic development with different factors like economic growth, years of schooling, literacy rates, social structures, and stuff like that. We have developing and infant economies. These are economies which are small but have a lot of potential for growth, and they're characterized by being agricultural or experiencing industrialization. They have some poverty and lack the standard quality of developed countries, but they are actively trying to develop and grow. We also have landlocked countries which face higher costs of transportation because they cannot use container ships for transport, so they have to use trains, trucks, and airplanes. Yeah, okay, so we have different measures of economic development in the country. We have HDI, we have Human Development Index. It basically combines gross national income per capita, years of schooling, and life expectancy into one measure to determine how good people in the country live. It combines three of these things, but it's also limited because averages actually hide the true numbers, and data may be not really credible or distorted because some countries try to interfere with it to look better. Then we have inequality adjusted HDI, basically HDI, which adjusts for like inequality in income distribution within the country. And then we have also that's that. And there are two things in globalization. Well, we have trade creation and trade aversion. Trade creation is basically when we create trade by having a trade block, because we can trade with members and it makes protection barriers and is beneficial. But trade aversion is bad because you are forced to trade with your trade block partner instead of trading with a country outside of the trade union, which might offer better prices. And where protectionism might create retaliatory wars in trade, so it's pretty bad. That's just brief globalization content I missed. Continuing with economic development, countries struggle and they need external assistance. So there's organizations that help developing economies grow. So we have World Bank. It's an organization that provides long-term investment for developing and emerging economies, helping them to build infrastructure, education system, and everything like that. We have IMF, International Monetary Fund. It's another institution, but it's short-term, provides emergency deficit and debt relief to countries in struggle. Then we also have non-governmental institutions, basically like charities, which also help the countries by like donating food and helping people. And it contributes to the country's development as well. So how do we solve problems of developing countries? How do we help them? We could provide, we could build infrastructure, provide education, provide financial aid, fight corruption, regulate them. We could help them trade with bigger countries, a lot of things. Then there's a bit of things that I missed. So we have Prebischer-singer hypothesis. So this guy or girl, I don't know, he says that developing countries, because they're agricultural, they rely on the export of primary goods, basically like farmable crops from a primary sector of the economy. And for these goods, the income elasticity of demand is inelastic, so it's less than 1. But for developing countries which export services, the services in the long run, the demand for services grows faster than the demand for primary goods. So the reason why developing countries end up being poorer is because they rely on primary goods for exports, but in the long run, demand for services grows faster and they miss out on profits because they only export primary goods primarily. That's the hypothesis. Then we have, in globalization, we have Marshall-lerner condition, basically when a depreciation of the currency would have a positive impact on trade balance only if YED, income elasticity of demand for exports, combined with income elasticity of imports, is higher than 1. So meaning that elasticity of exports and imports must be responsive enough for a positive change to happen to a trade balance. That's basically the whole hypothesis. Okay, now we could go into banking sector and talk about banks. So we have banking sector, we have commercial banks. Commercial banks basically provide loans and they accept deposits. They also provide currency exchange. They safekeep valuables, and they basically just facilitate payments in the economy and promote economic growth and stuff. We have investment banks. Investment banks provide services to firms. They do acquisitions, mergers, they trade initial public offerings, they manage assets, and they basically try to make money. So there's also NPLs in the banking sector. Non-performing loans is the loan which is 90 days overdue, and it's a major concern for commercial banks because they deprive them of profit. We have liquidity. It's a term basically referring to how easy something can be turned into cash. So like cash is liquid, it's pretty liquid, but like assets are not that liquid because it's kind of hard to convert them into liquidity. We have different markets. We have money market where people trade debt. We have capital market where people trade assets and shares and bond issuances. We have a currency market where people trade currencies. We have debt finance is basically when you trade your debt. It's low risk. No, it's high risk, but you keep the ownership of the asset. But there's also equity finance is when you trade shares. It's low risk, but you lose ownership. So it depends like how much you want and stuff. And there's also like liquidity ratio and capital ratio, basically like how much of the bank's assets are liquid, or like how much bank's assets are in capital or something. Then there's also market failure in the financial sector because there's asymmetrical information. Some banks lack the information about the person they lend to, so they might give the loan to a person who can't pay it back, and banks will end up being deprived of profit, and that's market failure. And then there's also moral hazard, because some banks could lend money, could give out a lot of risky loans, knowing the central bank would back wait. Commercial banks are encouraged to be risk-taking and give out risky loans because they know the central bank is obliged to back them up with emergency liquidity. That's market failure. There's also systemic risk because financial institutions lend to each other. So if one fails, the others fail along with it, and it creates an economic shock and a recession in the economy. We're almost done. Okay, so yeah, we have different regulators in the economy. We have PRA, Prudential Regulation Authority. It regulates I forgot. It's either consumers or banks. It has to be banks, right? It regulates banks, make sure they're fair, and it's for the consumer welfare. Finance. FCA, Finance Conduct Authority, regulates how banks operate, and like it's for consumer and economic welfare. And then we have Finance Policy Committee, FPC, Financial Policy Committee, like FPC, which basically looks at the whole market and clamps down on risky lending and behavior, like accumulation of debt or liquidity and stuff like that. So we have a central bank as well. Central bank is the bank that basically is the main bank of the country, and it acts as a lender of last resort. It functions as a processor of tax receipts. It is responsible for the monetary policy, interest rate, for the integrity of the currency, for the banknote safety, and it's basically a banker to the government. A central bank in UK is Bank of England, and in USA is the Fed. So yeah, that's that. Then for diagrams, for macro, we have the Lorenz curve, which is used to show income inequality. We have Gini coefficient is basically area above and below the curve is basically A plus B. I mean A divided by A plus B. And if it's 0, then it's perfectly equal. If it's 1, it's perfectly unequal. So closer Gini coefficient is to 1, the higher the inequality of income in the country. We have Phillips curve. Phillips curve shows the relationship between inflation level and unemployment. So the higher the inflation, the lower the unemployment, because more people employed, they consume, and there's high inflation, obviously. Then there's Kuznets curve. Kuznets curve shows that as the economy modernizes and industrializes, the initially inequality is low, and then it starts to increase because some groups during industrialization benefit faster than others. But when the country achieves the final stage and becomes economically developed, the benefits of industrialization reach everyone in the population through education and healthcare stuff. So income inequality decreases. That's the Kuznets curve. We also have a Laffer curve. Laffer curve shows how at a certain threshold, when you increase the tax rate beyond the best, like optimal level, the tax revenue starts to decrease because people start moving out of the country. They start trying to avoid paying taxes. So after a certain level, tax rate, it might be too high, so people might stop spending. There's also J curve. J curve is weird. I don't really remember what it means, but I know it exists. There's a J curve. Yeah, I think that's everything for micro and macro, all in one take, being absolutely blind. Where's my warble? Where is it? Where's my warble? Where's my warble? What? Where did it go? Where is it? Where am I? Where? Oh, it's right here. So, wait. Let me drink. I'll take the blindfold off now, and I'll go through the paper with all the content, and so we can see what I missed, if I missed anything. I probably missed a lot of stuff, because yeah, it's not that easy to just recall information from your brain. I probably missed so much stuff. Okay, so final reveal. I'm gonna take off my blindfold. My eyes are gonna hurt like shit. Honestly, they're gonna be red. Where's the table? Oh, fucking hell. My eyes hurt so much. Oh. Oh, God. Give me a second, guys. Oof. They're crying, see? That's how you know I didn't fake it, because if I faked it somehow, I would see through the blindfold and my eyes wouldn't be tearing right now. But because I spent 3 hours being blindfolded, my eyes are crying. It's a natural response of an eye and a pupil. Bro, I can't see. Everything is so blurry. Like, my eyes, my pupils are not focused. So, like, everything is blurry as hell. Oof. Oof. Oh my god. That took me like, what, 2 hours? 2 hours to recall everything? Oof. Okay, I can somehow see more or less right now, so let's go through the content. Wow. I didn't even look at the paper. I already remembered that I forgot one thing in the introduction for micro. Normative and positive and normative statements. Positive statements are... I'm gonna close my eyes so I can't see. Normative statements are... positive statements are factual and can be proven wrong or right with evidence, but normative statements, they're opinion-based and they will involve a value judgment, so they can't be proven right or wrong with evidence. I know that, but I missed it. I told you I'm gonna forget something. I knew it. I knew I missed this key aspect. But if I see on the paper with one marker, I'm gonna know, because if I know, then I know. Factors, sectors, yes. Factors affecting demand, yes. Technology, yes. Types of demand, yes. Behavioural, how objectives, efficiencies, biases, price mechanism, functions of money. Okay, factors affecting PADP, yes. Objectives, key things, regulation, market structures, natural monopolies. Oh, did I talk about natural monopoly? I did, yeah, I did. I talked about natural monopoly. I was right. Competition policy, price wars, yes, I talked about this. I forgot to mention labels, elasticity, supply and labor, elasticity, demand, but it's so obvious, I'm not gonna say it. It's just so easy. I found, yeah, geographical tense and substantial substitutes, wage, legal wage, elasticity, solutions, surprisingly, I remembered everything for micro, like, except for the normative positive statements and elasticity of labor, supply and demand. Wow. I didn't expect to know all of this. I studied it, but I didn't think I know it that well. Bro, my eyes are still blurry after... It's been 10 minutes or something of me seeing right. Okay, so what about macro? Macro, I probably forgot a bunch of stuff because I don't know macro that well. What did I talked about? Injections, yes, disposable, the marginal propensity to consume infection, yes. AD, not perfect, that's alright. AD shares, commodities, taxes, direct tax conditions, systems, economics, cycle, deflation, spend, advance payments, trading things, systems, normal exchange rate, externalities, liquidation rate, manage floating, managed. economic boom, recession, state action, prospect. Oh, I forgot one keyword. I forgot the word hysteresis. I said it during the recall, but didn't define it. So let me define it now. Hysteresis is basically refers to person's inability to work. It's caused by prolonged periods of unemployment, for example, during recessions. And it's basically when people lose their skills or employment causes emotional distress. So people become mentally and physically incapable of working because they don't have the skills. They forgot them. The skills decreased and they can't be productive anymore, or they just are scared to work. Yeah. Contraction fiscal more useless reports. Demand side, yes. Assumptions of comparative advantage causes globalization. Globalization increases, but patterns of trade varies. Trading blocks, reasons to restrict World Trade Organization, Prebischer-singer. Wow, I did all for micro as well. I just at the end I just confused the financial regulators. Did I mention them properly? Traditionally, I don't know. It doesn't say what they do. It's just a keyword. Well, that was a fun experiment. It took me what 2 hours 30 ish. I don't know the exact time. Yeah. So what do you think, guys? Did I do well? Comment if you saw any mistakes in my speech. I love to be criticized, especially when I'm blindfolded and disorientated and I'm trying to perform for the camera and try to remember 90 pages of raw text. So, bye bye.